in Ontario, why does less than 1% of the people take over a park for 99% of the population that uses it? It's unacceptable. We're going to move them on. We're going to get them proper housing and shelter.
Pictures and videos obtained by CTV News shows the Premier along with local MPPs as they toured an encampment site near Milligan's Pond outside of the city's downtown core.
I'm tired of these encampments taking over communities. People are terrified to walk down the street because they get harassed for money for drugs. And up in Barrie, E. coli, they're by a creek, they're feces and go in the washroom, and the E. coli's going through the roof. And this is the water people drink.
Doug Ford has officially lost his cool. And this time, it's not about gas prices or carbon taxes. It's about homeless encampments that have taken over Ontario towns, turning public parks into battlegrounds. In Barrie, a police raid uncovered $9,000 in cash, a stash of drugs, weapons, and even E. coli threats leaking into the community's water supply. Ford exploded at a press conference, blasting Ottawa for weak bail laws, blaming the courts for letting repeat offenders walk free, and demanding tougher sentencing. But here's the real shocker. This isn't just a local problem. It's a national crisis, with over 235,000 Canadians touched by homelessness every year. Rising rents, addiction, immigration pressures, it's a powder keg, and Ford's fury may have just lit the fuse. Stay tuned, because what's coming next will shake Canada's political core. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep watching. Doug Ford's press conference wasn't just another political soundbite. It was a full-scale eruption. Standing in front of reporters, Ford painted a picture of encampments spiraling out of control. He called them crime hubs, warning that 99% of residents in towns like Barrie are being forced to live alongside open-air drug markets, stolen goods operations, and public health nightmares. And he didn't hold back. He pointed fingers directly at Ottawa, demanding federal bail reform, tougher sentencing, and an end to what he called a revolving door justice system. His message was blunt: enough is enough.
Because enough is enough.
But here's the thing. Ford's outburst didn't come out of nowhere. For months, frustration has been simmering in communities across Canada. From Ontario to British Columbia, public parks and vacant lots are being transformed into makeshift tent cities. Municipal leaders are overwhelmed, shelter systems are at capacity, and the courts are bogged down with repeat offenders who cycle in and out with no meaningful consequences. Ford just happened to be the first premier willing to put it all on the national stage with fire in his voice. The numbers don't lie. Canada's homelessness crisis has ballooned to staggering proportions, affecting an estimated 235,000 people every single year. Compare that to earlier counts, and it's clear the trend is accelerating. In Vancouver, the 2024 homeless count jumped 9%, hitting 2,469 people, many crammed into sidewalks, alleyways, and temporary encampments. Toronto's streets tell a similar story, where tent-lined parks have become symbols of a system cracking under pressure. What's driving it? Start with the obvious: housing costs. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in many Canadian cities now exceeds $2,500. That's before utilities, groceries, or transportation. For a full-time minimum wage worker, that price tag might as well be $1 million. Even middle-class families are teetering on the edge, with mortgage rates soaring thanks to higher interest rates, making ownership just as unattainable as renting. The dream of affordable housing? Dead on arrival. And then there's the wave of immigration. Canada has welcomed record numbers of newcomers in recent years, an admirable commitment on paper. But the reality is that infrastructure hasn't kept up. New arrivals face the same rent spikes and shortages, pushing some into the shelter system and others into encampments when there's no safety net. Ford didn't say it outright, but his frustration hinted at a deeper truth. Canada simply doesn't have the housing stock to handle both population growth and skyrocketing costs. Of course, the crisis isn't just about dollars and cents. Addiction and mental health are at the heart of the issue too. Across the country, opioids continue to ravage communities, while mental health services are chronically underfunded and understaffed. Walk through an encampment, and you'll see the overlap. People struggling with untreated illnesses, self-medicating with dangerous drugs, and falling through every crack in the system. Ford's critics argue that no amount of policing or tougher sentencing can fix what is fundamentally a social services failure. But his supporters counter that lawlessness cannot be tolerated, no matter the cause. This is where the divide sharpens. To Ford's base, his tough talk is overdue leadership, a premier finally saying what many frustrated citizens feel. Families don't want needles in their playgrounds. Seniors don't want to feel unsafe walking past their local park. And taxpayers are tired of seeing billions of dollars poured into federal housing programs that seem to vanish into bureaucracy without solving the problem. For Ford's opponents, though, his rhetoric is dehumanizing. They argue that painting encampments as crime hubs reduces complex human struggles to sound bites designed to score political points. And yet, whether you see Ford as a truth teller or a bully, one thing is undeniable. The crisis is real and it's escalating. Encampments aren't just eyesores. They're warnings of deeper societal fractures. They reveal courts that can't keep up, shelters that can't cope, and governments that can't coordinate. This isn't a blip on the radar. It's a slow-motion breakdown playing out in plain sight. But here's where things take an even darker turn. Because while Ford may have exploded in Ontario, the same crisis is spreading coast to coast, leaving no province untouched. And what happens when communities start to lose patience with governments that only point fingers instead of fixing the problem? If Ford's outburst revealed anything, it's that Canada's homelessness crisis is no longer a story of individual hardship. It's a structural collapse. And at the heart of that collapse is a political blame game so toxic it makes progress nearly impossible. Take Ottawa. The federal government boasts about pouring billions into housing programs, $82 billion in the National Housing Strategy, to be precise. On paper, it sounds impressive. In practice, the rollout has been glacial. Projects take years to approve, money disappears into red tape, and municipalities are left holding the bag. While Ottawa celebrates ribbon cuttings on new affordable units, cities like Barrie, Toronto, and Vancouver are facing encampments that grow faster than housing can be built. Ford wasn't wrong when he said Ottawa has failed. The numbers back him up, but Ford isn't innocent either. Provinces hold the reins on healthcare, addiction treatment, and policing. For years, mental health services have been underfunded, leaving vulnerable people untreated until they spiral into crisis. And addiction? Harm reduction sites exist, but without adequate recovery programs, they've become revolving doors instead of lifelines. Critics argue that Ford's law and order approach may win headlines, but it ignores the human side of the crisis. After all, you can't police someone out of homelessness. The municipal level isn't spared either. Mayors from Vancouver to Montreal are begging for help, warning that their cities are becoming unlivable. Emergency shelters are maxed out, food banks are overwhelmed, and police forces are stretched thin. Yet despite their pleas, they're caught in the middle of Ottawa and the provinces, two governments locked in a tug-of-war over who's to blame. And here's the chilling reality. This isn't just about tents in public parks. It's about a system stretched to breaking. Courtrooms are clogged with minor offenses tied to survival: shoplifting, trespassing, petty drug possession. Hospitals are treating the same patients over and over again without the resources to offer lasting solutions. Communities are fraying and patience is running out. If nothing changes, the breakdown won't stop at homelessness. It will bleed into public safety, healthcare, and even economic stability. More than half of Canada's homeless population are employed in some capacity. 40% are single parents. These are people doing their best, but when the math doesn't add up, survival means a tent, a tarp, and hope for tomorrow. Ford's anger may resonate, but critics say it misses the point. Still, his speech lit a fire under the debate. And maybe that was the point. Canadians are split. Some demand compassion, others demand order. Some see encampments as humanitarian disasters, others see them as threats to public safety. And in the middle stands a premier who decided to stop tiptoeing around the issue and call it what he sees: a national failure. The question now is whether his outburst will spark real action, or whether it will fade into the usual cycle of outrage and finger-pointing. If history is any guide, Ottawa and the provinces will keep trading blame. Cities will keep drowning in costs, and Canadians will keep watching the crisis spread like wildfire. But the deeper danger is what happens next. Because if governments can't or won't fix it, the public will take matters into their own hands. And that's where things get truly unpredictable. Canada's homelessness crisis isn't just a headline. It's a flashing red warning light for the entire country. Doug Ford's fiery press conference may have captured attention, but the truth is bigger than one premier or one province. With 235,000 Canadians affected each year, soaring rents above $2,500, and encampments stretching from Vancouver to Montreal, this is a national emergency. And yet, Ottawa and the provinces keep tossing the blame back and forth while ordinary citizens watch their communities crumble. The question now is simple. Will Canada finally act? Or will this crisis drag the country into deeper division and decay? Because when governments fail, people lose trust. And when trust collapses, societies break. If you think this story matters, hit that like button, share this video, and make sure you're subscribed. Because the next chapter of this crisis is coming fast. and you won't want to miss it.